My mum, who is 33 years old, stood up, pointed at me, and screamed that I was mentally unwell when she saw me in court for the first time. She didn't cry. She didn't think twice. She stared the judge in the eye and declared that I was unstable, incompetent, and dangerous with money. She stated I had always been this way. She suggested I should never be able to manage my own money, let alone get anything from my grandma. I didn't stop her. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't say anything. On March 14th, I sat in the Milwaukee County Courthouse with my hands folded neatly on the table. I was wearing my grandmother's pearl earrings. The same ones she used to save for special occasions. The same ones that my mother had no right to even know about. The judge paid attention. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair pushed back and reading glasses that sat low on her nose. The kind of judge who has heard every untruth at least once, and most of them twice. She didn't stop my mother's lawyer from finishing his opening remarks. Then she bent over. She stared right at him, this young man in a suit that was too big for him and yet smelled like law school, and uttered one quiet inquiry. "Counselor, do you really not know who this woman is?" The room got quiet. The lawyer blinked. He looked at his notes. Then at me. Then back to the judge. My mom's visage altered right in front of me. Trust. Not sure. Fear. In roughly 4 seconds. At that point, I knew something had gone really wrong for her. But to understand why that inquiry was important, why the judge already knew more than my mother did, you need to know how I got there and how the lady who gave birth to me said I was crazy. Nancy Bergland is my name. I live in Milwaukee, which is in Wisconsin. I'm 33 years old. For the last 7 years, I've made a life doing one very specific thing, looking into people who steal from old people. I am a certified fraud investigator. I am a specialist on elder financial abuse, which includes fake signatures, fake powers of attorney, altered wills, and theft that is disguised as help. I have testified as an expert witness in 38 cases. 31 of those cases ended in convictions. That same judge heard 11 of those instances. But my mom didn't know that. We hadn't talked in 19 years. My parents split up when I was 14. It wasn't kind, mutual, or respectful. My dad went to Oregon. 3 months later, my mother married a man named Theodore Hollister. Somewhere between the wedding and the honeymoon, she realized that her former life was no longer right for her. She didn't fight for custody. She didn't call me on my birthday. She didn't ask what school I went to. She got rid of me. My grandma, Dorothy Bergland, reared me in a little, peaceful house in Eau Claire. She was a former elementary school teacher who didn't make a lot of money, but she was careful. Obsessive, even. She kept track of every dollar. All the receipts. Every bank statement. Every Sunday morning, she sat in complete stillness with a cup of coffee, 2 sugars and a splash of whole milk, and balanced her checkbook. She used to remark that people lie and memories fade, but paper never forgets. She taught me everything I know. 8 months ago, my grandma passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 81 years old. It happened while I was holding her hand. She gave me everything. The home. Her money. A little life insurance policy. It wasn't a lot of money. But it was hers. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a letter from a lawyer I had never heard of. My mother was fighting the will. She said that my grandmother's mental health was getting worse. She said I had cut her off from everyone else. She said I had tricked a weak-old woman into giving me everything. And then she became worse. She requested the court to say that I was mentally incompetent and to name a conservator to manage my grandmother's fortune. She would be that conservator. By the time I figured out what she was actually up to, my job was going down the drain, my reputation was being looked at, and my mother was in a courtroom telling a judge I was crazy. What she didn't know, and what she never cared to find out, was that being quiet doesn't imply you're weak. It can mean that someone is counting. And in the next few weeks, every number she sought to hide will come back and tell the truth about her. My mom wasn't in my life for 19 years. That wasn't an overstatement or a dramatic style of speaking. She didn't gently drift away. She didn't float away. She made a choice and followed through with it perfectly, like deleting a file and emptying the recycle bin to make sure. My dad moved out of state after the divorce. My mother stayed, got married again, and started anew. I lingered behind like something she didn't want to deal with. My grandmother was the only thing that kept me from being consumed by that stillness. Dorothy Bergland came in without making any comments or setting any conditions. One day I was a 14-year-old girl with a duffel bag and a mom who wouldn't look at me. The next thing I knew, I was in my childhood bedroom, and my grandma was sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing my hair as if nothing had happened. She never spoke my mother's name in anger. She didn't turn me against her. She just took up space. Grandma Dorothy thought that things should be in order. In routines. In order. When your life breaks apart, order feels like air. Dinner was always at 6 o'clock. Doing homework at the kitchen table. Lights off at 10. The checkbook came out on Sundays. She'd line up receipts, tidy them, and start adding numbers with a pencil she sharpened herself. That was where I learned to watch. She'd explain why every dollar counted. Not because money was sacred, but because truth was. If you keep good records, she'd remark, no one can tell you a story about your own life and get away with it. I didn't know it at the time, but she was teaching me. By the time I got to college, my mother had become a notion, not a person. A cautionary tale. A shadow I didn't look at too closely. There was one Christmas card the first year after the divorce. Nothing after that. No calls. No questions. No need to say sorry. It didn't feel like mourning when my grandma died and my mother suddenly came back with attorneys, accusations, and demands. It seemed like breaking the law. 3 weeks after the funeral, she got a letter from her lawyer. Formal. Kind. Cold. It accused my grandmother of mental decline and me of manipulation. It painted a picture of a loving daughter, my mother, who had been tragically ostracized. I laughed when I read that. Then I stopped laughing. Because connected to the charges was something more. A petition to have me labeled mentally unfit. A request for emergency guardianship. A request that my grandmother's accounts be frozen right now. This wasn't about getting back together. This was about having power. The damage spread in just a few days. My company put me on administrative review. Not because they thought the claims were true, but because they couldn't risk having an expert witness whose mental health was being questioned in open court. 7 years of work went away without a sound. No cases. No testimony. No court. Just waiting. I called my boyfriend, Cameron, that night. He paid attention. He tried to help. He kindly mentioned that my mother might be acting out of guilt. That this might be her method of getting in touch after all this time. I didn't yell at him. I didn't fight. I recently realized, for the first time, that some people grow up so protected that they don't see danger when it smiles at them. But my mum knew numbers brilliantly. She knew the exact sum of my grandmother's savings account. She put it in a legal document, down to the dollar. She could remember 167,400 without even thinking. She still didn't know if my birthday was in March or May. That was when it clicked. It wasn't about what my grandmother wanted. This wasn't about family. This was about being desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. The charges got worse as the weeks went by. Old school counseling documents from my adolescent years were hauled into court pleadings and reframed as permanent mental illness. A statement emerged from a stepsister I hadn't spoken to since she was 9 years old. None of it mattered. Truth doesn't matter once the machine starts. The process takes over. You can't just laugh it off. You can choose not to. You must show that you are sane. You have to stand up for your right to be an adult. That's when I stopped responding. And began to get ready. Because my grandmother hadn't only raised me to survive desertion. She taught me to see patterns. And somewhere, buried among bank statements, signatures, and dates, my mother had left one behind. By the time my mother officially filed her petition, the story she was telling had become so strong that it was almost believable. I wasn't a professional woman with a steady job on paper. I was a troubled adult child, a girl who needed therapy after her parents split up. A woman with a documented history of emotional instability. Someone who, according to my mother, could not be trusted with money, especially not money left by a vulnerable elderly woman. It didn't matter that the counseling only lasted a year. It didn't matter that I was 14. It didn't matter that abandonment tends to break children. The words were present. And once you file them, words have a life of their own. The court scheduled a guardianship hearing. My grandmother's accounts were marked. My inheritance was stuck in a legal limbo. My mother asked for emergency powers, which would give her the right to step in right away and protect the estate. Keep it safe from me. The proposed conservator listed on the paperwork was Daisy Hollister herself. At that point, the mask fell off. A woman who hadn't seen her mother in more than 10 years suddenly wanted to be in charge of her money. A woman who hadn't talked to me in 19 years said she was doing it out of worry for my health. Concern with the cash sum attached. Cameron tried to stay neutral, but neutrality is a luxury when someone is trying to erase you. His parents had begun to raise inquiries. Soft ones. Polite ones. The sort that make you think twice without ever stating it out loud. Did he know everything about my past? Any past? Are there any problems? One night, he asked me why I wouldn't just agree to a mental health checkup. He stated it will make everything obvious. He stated refusing made it look horrible. I told him the point wasn't whether I could pass an evaluation. The argument was that no one should be able to force one on you just because they want your money. He murmured something about smoke and fire. I asked him to go. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled my grandmother's framed portrait from the bookshelf and laid it on the table in front of me. It was from my college graduation. She was beaming like I'd cured cancer instead of receiving a standard accounting degree. She used to say paper trails don't lie. So I stopped listening to the hubbub and started looking at the figures. My grandmother had added me as a joint holder on her principal bank account 2 years before she died. At the time, she stated it was for convenience, just in case she needed help paying expenses. I pulled 2 years of statements. I developed a spreadsheet. Every deposit. Every time you take money out. All of the patterns. And that's when I spotted it. There were 7 withdrawals that shouldn't have happened in the last 11 months of my grandmother's life. No bills for utilities. No food. No drugstore. Only cash. 4,000. 8,000, 12,000. The total is $47,850. Each withdrawal happened within 3 days of a recorded visit from my mother. The woman who said I abused an elderly person had been discreetly taking money out of her own mother's account. And all of a sudden, everything clicked. The need. The violence. The lies. This wasn't a court case. It was a secret. But bank statements were just the tip of the iceberg. I needed more. I needed proof that my grandmother couldn't just say it was a mistake or a coincidence. The next weekend, I drove to Eau Claire by myself. I walked through the house where she had lived for 43 years. The smell of lavender and old books was still there. Her filing cabinet was organized, yet something wasn't right. Things were mixed up. Not lost. Just upset. As if someone had been searching for something really special. At that point, I remembered the safe deposit box. It had been years since I thought about it. And in that box, behind the jewelry, papers, and bonds, was something my mother never knew about. A diary. Bound in leather. Outdated. Be careful. My grandmother didn't merely think something was wrong. She had written down everything. The first page of the journal almost made me cry. My grandmother's handwriting was still fine, but the lines were a little shaky, like a hand that realized it couldn't afford to be reckless longer. She wrote about a call. For the first time in years, my mom had called her. She said softly, "Sorry." She claimed she wanted to get back in touch. She admitted she had made mistakes. She claimed she missed her. My grandma didn't believe it. She wrote that clearly. But she was worn out. And alone. She wanted to believe that people could change. The next entries were weeks apart. Then days. Daisy came to see us in August. They asked to borrow $2,000 for an emergency. Another visit in October. Another tale. $4,000 more. Daisy came back in December, this time with her husband. They brought documents. My grandmother said she was having a rough day. That her mind was cloudy. She didn't really understand what she was signing, just that Daisy said it would make things easier. She read those documents 2 weeks later on a good day. Power of attorney. She wrote that her stomach fell. That she thought she was dumb. That she was embarrassed. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the stealing. Not the manipulation. The disgrace. My grandmother, who had taught generations of kids how to read and had kept her own checkbook in order since 1987, was too ashamed to tell me that her own daughter had fooled her. So she did what she knew how to do. She kept track of things. Every time I go. Every time you take out money. All of the lies. The last entry was made 6 weeks before she died. It was for me. She said she was sorry for not telling me sooner. She stated she tried, but the words wouldn't come out. She said she knew Daisy would come for the money when she was gone, and she wanted me to be ready. She wrote, "I know you will fight. You were always stronger than I was." I sat on the floor of that bank vault and cried till my chest hurt. After that, I wiped my face, shut the notebook, and went back to being me. Because grief doesn't stop you from training. The power of attorney paper was authentic, but the notarization was not. The signature was my grandmother's, and it was wobbly but real. A man who had retired 5 years previously had the notary stamp. An old stamp had been used on a new document. Not neat. Not working. Not allowed. A crime. I made the search bigger. Theodore Hollister, my mother's husband, had a past. His first wife. His own mum. Estates that got smaller for no reason. Questions that were never addressed because no one knew how to ask them. Up until now. The next day, I called my lawyer, Caroline Jankowski. She didn't stop. She didn't say anything. She paid attention. She told me that this wasn't just probate anymore when I was done. This was against the law. Federal. She asked me what I wanted to do. I told her I didn't want to frighten them. I didn't want them to change their minds. I wanted them to feel sure. I wanted my mom to stand in front of a judge and swear to every lie she told before I showed her the truth. Caroline smiled. The hearing was scheduled for March 14th. 6 weeks from now. A lot of time to make a case. And enough rope for my mom to finish tying her own knot. I handled my mother's case the same way I handle other cases. No rage. No shortcuts. No guesses. I made a file. First, make timelines. Every time you go. Every call. Every time you take money out. Dates lined up perfectly, as if they wanted to be seen. 7 times in 11 months, I took out cash. All of this happened within 3 days of Daisy Hollister coming to my grandmother's place. That wasn't a coincidence. That was just a habit. Caroline sent our answer to the court. It was short, boring, and on purpose. We said that the claims were false. We said I was mentally fit. We asked for a hearing. No proof attached. No blame. No counterclaims. There was nothing to warn them. The next day, my mother's lawyer, Bradley Fenwick, called Caroline. Later, she informed me that he sounded almost happy. Like he was ready for a battle but didn't find one. That's it, he inquired. Caroline said we were looking forward to going to court. Bradley set up my deposition 2 weeks before the hearing. Normal procedure. Questions asked while under oath. A time for them to uncover weaknesses and get ready for their attack. I knew exactly what they wanted when I entered into that room. And I didn't give them anything. He wanted to know about my schooling. I told them I had a bachelor's degree in accounting. He wanted to know what I did for a living. I told them I was an accountant. He wanted to know about my mental health history. I told them that I had talked to a counselor for a short time as an adolescent when my parents split up. Short replies. Tone that is flat. No reasons given. My mom watched through a video hookup. I could see her in the corner of the screen. Her face transformed throughout the course of 2 hours. Initially she looked nervous, then bewildered, and then happy. She felt I was broken. She believed I had given up. She didn't know that the woman who was answering those questions had spent 7 years cross-examining fraudsters who stole millions of dollars and laughed while they lied. This wasn't a sign of weakness. It was self-control. Something unexpected happened a week before the hearing. There was a message for Caroline. Merlin Hollister, my stepsister, wanted to meet. Caroline told me it could be a trap. A way to get me to talk. But I had seen something during the deposition. Merlin's jaw constricted as Theodore's name came up. Merlin turned away as my mum chuckled. That wasn't being loyal. That was terror. We met in a coffee shop that was halfway between our 2 cities. A place where everyone can meet. People. Safe. Merlin seemed quite tired. There are dark circles under her eyes. Her hands shook a little as she grasped her cup. She said she was sorry for what she had said. It was written by her father. He told her to put her name on it. She replied she didn't have any other options. She didn't answer right away when I asked her what she meant. She looked at the table for a while before telling me about her grandmother, who was Theodore's mother. Dementia. Power of attorney. An estate that is no longer there. She said the figures never added up. She stated she had asked once. She murmured that while touching the inside of her wrist. After then, I didn't ask any more questions. Theodore Hollister wasn't only in a bad place. He has a lot of experience. And my grandmother wasn't the only person he hurt. Merlin said she was sleepy. She stated she knew what was going to happen in that courtroom and she didn't want to be a part of it anymore. She swore to reveal the whole truth. I felt something I hadn't felt since the letter came when I drove home that night. Hope. Not the type that waits. The kind that gets ready. The hearing came in quietly. No dramatic sky. No feeling of warning. It was a grey Tuesday morning, and the courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. My mom came early, wearing soothing colors and with a folder she didn't need. Theodore sat next to her, calm and seemingly bored. He nodded at Bradley Fenwick like this was normal. It was for him. I sat down with Caroline. A thin folder. One legal pad. A pen that I didn't plan to use very much. The judge came in. Formalities. Names on the list. Bradley then stood up. He whispered softly. With care. Like telling a child about a sad event. He talked about worry. About love. About a daughter who had withdrawn and a granddaughter who had fallen under the influence of others. He stated my grandma was weak. He told me I was unstable. He replied that my mother was only attempting to keep her own family safe. The judge nodded. Be patient. Not biased. Then Caroline got up. She didn't speak out. She didn't argue about how she felt. She didn't even glance at my mom. She asked if she might call the first witness. The judge said yes. Daisy Hollister got a call from Caroline. My mother's face got tight. Daisy came up to the stand with a smile, confidence and practice. She talked about visits every week, love, and care. She said she never touched my grandmother's money. Caroline let her speak. Then she gave her a pile of papers. Statements from the bank. 7 withdrawals. Dates that are exact. Exact amounts? Caroline asked one thing, did you live in the house on each of these dates? Daisy thought about it. Once. Then 2 times. Then she agreed. Caroline asked another one. Did you go to the bank with Mrs. Whitmore? Daisy said no. Caroline slid a security photo ahead. The smile went away. The judge leaned closer. Daisy's lawyer didn't agree. Caroline answered in a calm way. The objection was not accepted. Daisy broke. She said someone requested her to help. She stated it would only last a short time. She claimed she believed in Theodore. That was enough. Caroline took a break. Bradley ran around. He called Theodore Hollister to try to get control back. That was a bad idea. Theodore spoke clearly. He made excuses for everything. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said it was because of his age. He said it was because of confusion. Then Caroline got up again. She called Hollister Merlin. The room transformed. My mom turned around in her seat. Theodore stopped moving. Merlin spoke slowly in court. With care. She talked to the court about her grandma. About the power of attorney. About money going missing. About questions that were never answered. As she said, she lifted her wrist up. No need for an explanation. The judge asked for a break. His tone was changed when he came back. Focused. Sharp. He turned down the petition, denied it in full, ordered a forensic audit of all of my grandmother's accounts right away, and referred the matter to the district attorney. My mother started crying. Not in a quiet way. Theodore stayed still. As we walked out of the courthouse, Caroline finally smiled. "This isn't over," she said. "But it's begun." After the hearing, life didn't miraculously go back to normal. The FBI moved faster than I expected. 3 days later, Special Agent Tina Morales contacted. A woman in her 40s with a handshake that felt like iron and eyes that didn't miss anything. She had reviewed the evidence packet Caroline had submitted. She'd followed Theodore's financial history back 15 years, far beyond what I had found. Patterns. Repeated plans. Victims hiding in plain sight. They were making a case. Theodore and Daisy Hollister were detained on April 2nd. Federal charges: wire fraud, mail fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The indictment ran 18 pages. Every stolen cash accounted for, every bogus document traced. The investigation into Theodore's mother's estate reopened. Forensic accountants identified nearly $200,000 in missing transfers in the 3 years before her death. Geraldine Hollister, his mother, had been meticulous her entire life, yet when she departed, practically everything was gone. Merlin testified for the prosecution. She disclosed everything she knew about her father's finances, the methods, the intimidation, the manipulation. She also explained how Daisy had been groomed to take advantage of my grandmother. For her assistance, she gained immunity. I didn't ask any questions. She was just as much of a victim as anyone else. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I attended simply for my testimony and the verdict. My proof, which included my grandmother's journal, the fake notarization, and the bank records, all held up. 4 charges were brought against Daisy Hollister. 5 years in federal prison, at least 4 before parole eligibility. Restitution ordered, $47,850 plus interest and penalties. Theodore Hollister, guilty on 7 charges. 6.5 years at a federal facility in Minnesota. His laundromat seized and liquidated, the money going to creditors and restitution. Their house sold at auction. Memberships, assets, everything built on stolen money dismantled. 2 months later, I received a letter from my mother. 6 pages long. Excuses. Self-pity. Not a word of apology. Caroline read it aloud to me. I didn't even open it. Some paper trails aren't worth following. Finally, in July, my grandmother's estate was settled. I took care of her house in Eau Claire. It smelled like her, like lavender, old novels, and coffee on Sunday mornings. Cameron and I go there on the weekends and have coffee on the porch where Grandma used to do her checkbook. I saved her journal, not as proof anymore, but as her voice preserved. A reminder that even when she was terrified, ashamed, and bewildered, she never stopped fighting for me. Cameron proposed in October. Olive Garden, Route 9, where we had our first date 5 years ago. Breadsticks infinite, memories priceless. I said yes. My granny would have liked him. She always told me I needed someone dependable, someone who wouldn't run when things went hard. My firm reinstated me the week following the court hearing. My manager directly apologized for ever doubting me. My first case back, an 84-year-old woman in Kenosha whose nephew stole $89,000 from her retirement account. We got back every last dime. He received 4 years. I realized that revenge isn't about being mad or upset. It's all about balance. It's all about being patient. Paperwork. Integrity. Teaching people who think they can steal anything from anyone that the world doesn't function that way. My mother believed I was weak since I didn't say anything. She felt I was broken since I didn't fight back right away. She forgot I was raised by a woman who kept receipts. Paper trails are always true. Numbers never do. And justice, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way to speak.